Hey guys, what's up? So today we're going to be looking at a part that I'm building for a CPU that I'm going to be making in TUNG, hopefully. And you can see there is several variants of this giant tall thing sitting around me. What this actually is 32 16-bit registers that are dual read. So that means you can read, so like one cell can read to either two different places. So this is what it allows you to do then is you hook up decoders to the two different reads, you can read two different numbers out at the same time, or the same number out on two different outputs. So if you wanted to double a number, let's say for instance you had the number 5 stored in the register, and you loaded 5 on both A and B on the blue and the yellow here, you put 5. It would put 5 out on both, it would pull that data out on both inputs or outputs of this. And then you would go into your ALU and you could do operation like add or whatever on it, subtract you if you wanted to see if they were equal or something like that. So I will demonstrate this now. So first what I did is I put in all ones into every address and then checked to see, like if I didn't read anywhere, I just checked to see as I wrote ones anywhere if like the read was messed up anywhere, and it just came out reading ones, and it did. So there was actually an error on the bottom cell, and I had it like this, and I couldn't get to the bottom cell here. I can't get through, like I can get through here, but I can't get underneath to work on to see the bottom cell. So I had to lift it up so that I could then work on this cell here and the other ones, and that allowed me to debug it. And so now that after that, what I did is I then read the addresses one at a time to check and make sure that they were reading the right value and weren't reading the wrong one. And then I had one address that was wrong, and so I had to fix it. And then the same thing happened here, where I had one address that was wrong and I had to fix it. And then I think this should be working now. So what I can do is, so I removed all the inputs. So if I have no data in and I write to, let's say to 1, and I read 1 now, I'm not going to have anything coming out. But if I read 2, I still have all those 1s in there from previous that I wrote in there. And I could read like 2 and 4. You know, I could read any address like that at the same time. And so like for instance, if like what a CPU would do is, let's say we started with a value of 1 and we wrote that into 1 here, we could load 1. Then that 1 would come, let's say we load 1 and 1, that would then make 2. So let's write that into the next address. And now let's load 1 and 2 instead. 1 and 2 makes 3, so let's write 3 to 3. Whoops, I need to write 3 to 3. So now if we load 3 here, like that, now it's 3 plus 2, which makes 5. So we're going to store 5 into number 4 here. Clock it. And now if we load register 4, we have 5 plus 3, and we can store 8. Like that. And then load that. And we can keep repeating this process, and as you just saw, that was us simulating Fibonacci. So that was us just adding the numbers that were on the output here, and then whatever the addition was, we just store it to the next cell here, and then just load that back through. In reality, you don't need to iterate through all these cells. You could do it through 2 registers if you had a 2-operand system, and 3 registers if you had a 3-operand system, which this is a 3-operand system, so it would require 3 registers. A plus B equals C, B plus A equals C, and then A plus C equals B. You'd loop in that order, or in some combination of that order. You keep looping that over and over and you'd get this. And that's what we're doing basically right here, but we're also just keeping incrementing through, so we have all our previous values. So we can load back the previous values out of there, see what's in it. So we had a 1, a 2, a 3, a 5, and then nothing. Oh, an 8, and then was anything written after that? Oh yeah, at 6 it had 1s written afterwards. And here we could see the history in this input where 1 had the value 1, 2 has value 2, 3 has value 3, 5, 8, and this should go up on, nope, okay. And so you can see these basically just keep the same values as each other, one's just delayed behind the other when it's reading. So you get the 2 previous ones added to the next. And then yeah, you can basically just write data to any one of these spots, and now I will explain how this works. Okay, so kind of going back to my Minecraft roots and redstone, I like to work in vertical. For some reason I just like vertical inputs and outputs better, because like it's just easier to visualize that down here means less significant and up there means more significant, and it would just like go upwards. And so like that's basically how this, I mean, the inputs and outputs, I guess it doesn't matter because they're not configured to anything yet, but like when I build my hardware, it's going to carry upwards like this, because these are going to plug right into my ALU, which I can show you later. Well, actually, the ALU is not that big thing here, but that small box and everything forward right there is the ALU. That right there. And so that's just going to plug right into these 2 inputs. Outputs go right into the ALU, and the output of the ALU goes into the inputs here, like this. So we wouldn't be simulating this. And then there's like controls that the ALU can do to make it do anything, like add, subtract, or, nor, and, XOR, and, NAND, whatever. Shift. I built a shifter on it, so we'll be able to write shift, which from when it's vertical is downshifting. But so to explain how this works now, there's a bunch of D flip-flop cells. So let's look at a D flip-flop cell. So the D flip-flop cell is here. So this is going to be a lot easier to understand when you see it just one at a time. So here's one read here, and here's the other read, and then we have well, there's where they read out, and here's where we actually get to select which one we want to read or not. And so right now we're trying to read both, and there's a 0 stored in here. So if we flip data in and clock it, now we can read that data through either that read, or both. So now basically, if you stack this vertically 16 times, you have 16 bits, and you hook up this the data, each gets its own data inline. The clock shares all the same clock on the vertical, as you can see here, all the same clock on the vertical. So all the vertical ones get clocked at the same time. Then you're storing words vertically. And so when you read, you want to take one of these, and one of these, and then one of these, and one of these up there. So it's dual read. And that's what this is doing here. This is before, like I slowly had to build this thing up over time and made sure it worked as I built it, because otherwise I'd be screwed. And you can kind of check for wire issues by flying through it and seeing if it's uniform, because there's kind of a look that it should have. But actually, I can free up world space on this and delete this now that I have a working version there. But now you see how it works one cell without all that other logic on it here. You can see that it's stacked a bunch of times this way now. So not only do we have a word going down like that, but now we have 1, 2, 3, 4, all the way up to 16 different words here. Or 32 different words. 32 words of 16 bits gives you 64 bytes. So this is storing 64 bytes of memory in dual read fashion, where I can select either one read or the other read or both with this mechanism here. So now the trick is, putting on decoders to address this stuff, and then, I was testing this with some inputs here and seeing if it outputted right on this. So what I did is I built these decoders, which I showed in a previous video. I built these small ones that are like, there we go. This is a full 0 through 15 decoder, and it's built so that you can take this and stack it at the end here, and then add an extra bit on the top of these. All these would get blotters, and then past the halfway point, it would all get inverters on the top, and then that's how you add another bit. So you basically double this in bit size by basically copying one. Now that this is like a 32-bit one, if I want to make the 64, I would copy the whole thing, paste it at the end. At the halfway mark before, I would place blotters on the top, and on the halfway mark after, I would place inverters at the top for the next bit. and then I can double it again by doing the same process. So you can build these kind of modularly if you build them the right way. So I figured this is probably one of the better ways to build decoders. And that's also why there's dual inputs like this, because, you know, it was originally one and then it got stacked. So, and then I just added the extra input for the next bit because I might as well keep the trend. So now you have inputs at multiple spots if you need it. And so now that's what this is doing here. I have these decoders, and now blue and yellow represent read. So you have a read A and a read B. And then here's your write. And I'll actually just show it on this side instead because it's the working one. So the reads alternate between right, left, right, left, right, left, right, left for each one, and that corresponds to A or B. And so I just stack these on top of each other like this to save space. And I think it looks kind of neat. So that's all this is doing, because if you saw in the smaller cell, one read was A, one read was B for one bit, and then it would go to the next one, and then it was another bit. So every two of these is one bit. So that's why they alternate between A and B for one bit. And then over here, the writes, it doesn't need to be so dense. And then what you need to do is you need to take the write address, and you only want to trigger it when you have a clock. So you want to say where you want to trigger it, but only trigger it for that clock. And so that's what it does here. The clock line goes to all of them and says, okay, when the clock line turns off and the address is off, then it'll go through this inverter and turn on to the right one for that brief moment. So you can see when we clock this, that one way down there clicked. So if I put the most significant bits in here, it'll come to this one, so you watch this one clock. So you can see a clock. Only for the clock cycle, or only for how long that's down for, the button. And then you could hook up your own pulse shorteners and whatnot to control all this. And I've been having good luck with these cells for some reason, and I'm not getting any oscillation error. If I go to 15, it's actually 31. I get that value out. Yeah, and so that's really it. That's how this thing works. The read or the write address comes through and tells it which row or which column to select for writing, for where you're writing to. That's what the address is telling you, what column. And the reads are selecting which column on the output you want. And that's all there is to this. I can make this available for download, either the world or the this thing, but if you get it with this thing, it'll be stacked on this board here, and you're going to be missing the inputs and outputs. So if you want that without the world, the way this works is the top and the bottom of these, like the middle, I guess I should say, in the bottom, are the outputs. So you take one and bus it to one side, and you take the other one and you bus it to the other side, and those are your two inputs and outputs, or those are your two outputs for this. And then your inputs here, just the top of this. And these are all connected to each other, so you just hook this up to inputs here. And then, yeah, least significant bit is at the bottom for the decoders, most significant bit is at the top, and then clock is up here. So that's why it's labeled like that. And so this is the write address. Least significant bit is on the bottom, most significant bit is on the top. And that's why it's hooked up like that. And then the same thing there. So now if I include the TUNG board, you guys will be able to hook up your own inputs and outputs and be able to control this thing and play with it. And it's fairly quick. I don't actually know the full delay for one of these cells, but I think the size makes up for whatever speed delay it might have. But there's no like delayers or any components in here. It's just, you know, one tick devices, so it should be really quick. It should be like maybe 5 or 6 ticks, maybe 7. Just to get to the read post here, and then once it gets to the post here, then it's all instant across, which is nice. Well, one tick, I guess I should say, to process, but like there's no delay between each one, so it's synchronous. And anyway, on that note, I think I've bored you guys enough, and I'll see you guys next time. Thank you for coming to my TED Talk.